Welcome to the Cinema Australia podcast with Matthew Eales.
Regular listeners may have noticed that I've jumped right into this introduction without any trailer audio. Well, that's because at the time of recording this podcast, no trailer is available for Two Ugly People. That's how early this interview is coming to you. Hello and welcome to the Cinema Australia podcast. My name is Matthew Eales. In this episode, I'm joined by the great Peter Skinner to discuss his debut feature film, Two Ugly People. There's not much point in me gushing here about how much I love this film, because I do enough of that throughout this interview. But I will say that it's only August and Two Ugly People is already not only one of my favourite Australian films this year, but one of my favourite films of the year in general. Two Ugly People follows two strangers, played by Michael Sheasby and Cato Ayyar, who meet by chance in a highway-side motel. But as their stay goes on, we begin to wonder if their meeting was by chance at all. What follows is truly hypnotic filmmaking from Skinner. Peter Skinner is an Academy Award qualifying St Kilda Best Film-winning and Australian Directors Guild nominated filmmaker. Beginning as a sculptor with a Bachelor of Visual Arts, he later earned a Master of Film Studies from the University of Sydney and a Masters in Directing from AFTRS. His work blends visual arts with narrative storytelling, earning critical acclaim. As co-founder of Seymour Pictures, he wrote, directed, produced and edited his debut feature, Two Ugly People, shortlisted for the 2024 Venice Film Festival. Growing up in working class Sydney, his films explore love, identity and the beauty within everyday lives. I'm such a fan of Skinner's previous work that I've embedded a few of his short films in this article at cinemaaustralia.com.au, and I can't recommend them enough. The Stranger is one of my favourite short films, I think, of all time. Two Ugly People will celebrate its world premiere at this year's Cinefest Oz in Western Australia. If you can't make it to that festival, then be sure to keep an eye on cinemaaustralia.com.au for screening updates. Anyway, enjoy. Peter, thank you for joining the Cinema Australia podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about films.
I've always admired your filmmaking, so I was incredibly grateful to get an early look at Two Ugly People ahead of its world premiere at Cinefest Oz, and I can't praise this film enough. I was so moved by this film on both a narrative level and on a cinematic level. If I was still reviewing films, I'd give Two Ugly People 5 big red shining stars, and I know that you're already an accomplished filmmaker, but it's hard to believe that this is your debut feature film. It's mature filmmaking at the highest level, so a massive congratulations to you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're like one of the first people to see the film, so it's our first review, and if it's only a verbal one, I'll take it. So thank you so much.
That's right. I noticed that as well as the film's world premiere at Cinefest Oz, it was pre-selected for the 2024 Venice Film Festival. Excuse my ignorance here, but what does that mean exactly? I just couldn't quite work it out.
Yeah, it took us a while to work it out as well, but we basically, through Screen Australia, they selected our film to kind of be screened to the traveling selectors of the Venice Film Festival, and I think they screened between 8 and 10 films, I'm not quite sure, in the cinema, and we were lucky that we got a rough cut of our film to that viewing, and they selected it to take it to the next stage to talk to the rest of the final selectors. Unfortunately, we didn't get through the final selection, but it was such an early rough cut that if we did get in, we probably wouldn't have had a finished film, but we would have been working hard to get it out if it did.
Yeah. Well, I've never seen these kind of words pre-selected used to promote a film before. But the way that you've explained it, then I think that's fantastic. So, what is it? 10 Australian films in a cinema that are put in front of these selectors?
Yeah, it's just like I think Screen Australia films and films that they kind of know about or know the filmmakers. And we were lucky; we just kind of sent them a cold email, and they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to hear about the film." And then they must have liked it in the way that they put it forward to be viewed. But like it's a funny one because it was our first send out to anyone, and we were kind of like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing. We're going to go to Venice." But then you get a reality check in filmmaking sometimes or constantly, and then you're left another year and a half to finish the film. But we were very glad we had that time because the film is much better for it.
Yeah, and that's such a great attitude to have too, Peter. I mean, I've spoken to filmmakers previously who get really burnt by not being accepted into every film festival in the world, so I think the attitude that you've got there is a great one.
Well, you just have to get your film out to the audience, right? And there's an audience everywhere for everything, and it's just about finding that right kind of partnership with the the people that want to see it, the people who want to promote it, and then, the people that are going to be sitting in the seat at the end of the day watching it. And, as a filmmaker, you want people to see your films. So really, it doesn't really matter who it is unless people are seeing it, until
Yeah,
people are seeing it.
that's right. That's right. And Cinefest Oz is without a doubt one of the best film festivals in Australia, in my opinion. I've been lucky enough to be a part of that festival for the last 12 years now, and I just think it's incredible, especially if you're able to experience all aspects of this festival as a whole. Will you be attending, and have you been to Western Australia before?
I've been over there, but I haven't been there for the festival. But actually, when all my short films and stuff came out, it was during the COVID time. So I actually haven't been out of Sydney for any of my films that I've ever played. So Cinefest was to have my first, debut feature, but also a film that I can leave my hometown to go and watch. I think I feel pretty happy because it's a beautiful area over there, and it's a great festival, and they're very, very willing to support and very open to be have as many people come over as possible. So we're just really excited to get over there in September and get it watching it with people.
Yeah, have you heard much about this festival? I mean, a lot of Eastern staters expect to come over here for Cinefest Oz and it be like half an hour out of Perth, but it's actually like 3 hours away from Perth in one of the most beautiful rural areas that you can, sorry, regional areas that you could imagine. Is that what you're anticipating? Are you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of it until I looked up that our film was playing in Bustleton, and I was like, "Oh, where's Bustleton?" And I looked it up, and it's a couple of hours outside of Perth. But everyone that I speak to, everyone that's been to the festival, everyone that knows of Bustleton is like, it's an amazing place, and the cinemas they're screening in are great, and it's the great support, and it's kind of one of those festivals where you kind of go out, I assume, to a different place, and the kind of whole area is alive with film, which is exciting because it's not tucked into a major city somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, and it's a massive celebration of film, but also of wine, and and just celebrating the region as a whole as well.
Hmm.
I hope that you really enjoy it. But as I do with this podcast, I like to go back to the beginning of a filmmaker's career and some of those early beginnings. And I read last night that before you moved into filmmaking, you started your career as a figurative sculptor. How did that come about?
Yeah, so it's funny, in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And in year 11, I think I got into art, and I was never necessarily academic in my high school years. And then when I got into art, I was like, oh, this is a thing that I might be into. And I went to a kind of like a more of a sporting high school. So art back then in, the early 2000s, and there was no film course or class. There was no, I think you could, if you were in like fourth, like advanced English, you could write a script, but I didn't even know what script writing was at that point in time. So yeah, I got into art, and then I left high school and applied for the art school, and I got into the sculpture kind of studio at Sydney College of the Arts, and then for the next 4 years, I did figurative sculpture and working with myth and narrative within individual kind of um, static objects. And then I think my work has always had a kind of narrative pull, and then I did a little like elective in film, like film art and video art, and then that kind of linked me into the love of film. But I've always loved movie making and movies, but I just never knew, coming from working class Maroubra, that you could get into film like that. So,
Yes.
but yeah, I started out in sculpture and I loved it, and I did it for many years. And film art school was a whole thing in itself, which. And there may be a movie in there one day that I might make, but it was a great place to kind of learn your foundation of conceptual artwork and thought processes and history, and yeah, I loved it.
Do you still have some of your sculptures? Did you ever sell any? Where are they now?
I used to do body sculptures of my own torso and arms and legs and my head and my cousin and all my kind of friends that I could rope into sitting in a chair still for about an hour to be covered in plaster and stuff. I sold one of them ever, and someone may own that still or might not. But so one of my heads is hanging in someone's house maybe, but they were in my parents' house. And then when we moved out of our family house, I made the decision to just throw them into the tip, which we had nowhere to store them, and no one wanted to lug my body around if didn't talk back to you. So we left it when we moved house, and I'm glad I did. But then now I'm like, oh, maybe I should have kept them. But where would I have kept them? I don't know.
Do you still dabble in it today?
Not really. I've actually, funny, I never ever thought about doing sculpture again since leaving sculpture, but I've gotten into like painting and photography and different elements of art, the art process, and maybe one day I'll make it back to sculpture. But I think right now I'm more immersed in the idea of sculpting in time, but filmmaking. But yeah, no, I maybe one day if I have a house big enough that I can have a little studio somewhere and want to drip wax and leads and cements everywhere, I'll do that.
Now, that's interesting that you mentioned the photography and other artistic mediums. Are you someone who enjoys all artistic mediums? Is there any in particular that you don't enjoy, maybe?
I think I do. I think it feels like a dirty word sometimes to say that you're an artist, but maybe because I did 4 years of sculptural work, I can maybe say that I'm an artist, and I hope that comes across somewhere in my films. But I think, yeah, holistically on the whole, I love all art forms. I think cinema is the holistic art form with music and imagery and design and performance. And I would love to get into theater at some point, maybe direct or write a theater play. But yeah, I think I love the tactile nature of, the hands-on approach to art. So I guess probably more of a film photographer rather than a digital photographer. But
Mm.
yeah, that tactile nature of building stuff with your hands. And my family come from, tailors and engineers and stuff, and working class side of the world. So I think it is very much a tactile approach to art that I enjoy. But the conceptual and emotional side is also so thrilling.
And I guess the reason that I was so interested in, your background in these different artistic mediums is because Two Ugly People is such a visually stunning and artistically inspired film. So yeah, I was a bit curious to hear about your background there. But you're a director, writer, producer, and editor. Were you self-taught in any of those aspects, or were they all part of your studies? And I guess I'm referring to editor there mostly.
Yeah, I think when I came out of art school after 4 years, and I ended up doing a few little film things within that, and made my first film during that time. I got into AFTRS in the grad diploma of directing straight out of art school, and I guess I thought that the artistic process would transfer over to the filmmaking process, and I guess that wasn't the case because my films that I made in that first degree probably aren't worth seeing, or unless you're a diehard Peter Skinner fan, you probably never even enjoy them. But yeah, they are. That was my process into like kind of the film medium, and I guess because I've come from a sculptural medium, and even though art can be very collaborative in that sense, I was kind of this the solo artist in that world because as a 21-year-old artist who's going to really come and help me as a team, and I can't really pay anyone. Um, so being self-taught and directed was always my kind of starting point, and I'm kind of like that thing if I don't know something, I want to go out and learn it. And so out of necessity, I think I learned to be a writer, a director, and an editor and producer. But it's also, I think, when you're young and you're starting out, and I'm sure everyone has this problem, like you have to find your people. And if you can't find the one thing that's stopping you from doing it, then you just have to learn to do it yourself because no one's going to come in and save you to, oh, you need a writer, I'll write something for you. That might happen. But if you can't meet that person, then you have to learn it yourself. So editing has always been it's the most sculptural element of the filmmaking process because you're assembling something in over time like you would a sculpture, but it's the holistic process for me that from start to finish, from conception to writing to directing and on set with an amazing team to putting it together that I think if I wasn't involved in some way in that whole process, I would feel like I was missing part of the creative process that I like going through. But as I grow as a creative and meet new people and have more experience and people I can like widen my reach, I think I find people that can do it better than me, and then I'm not going to stand in the way of my work or the work of what we do together to be better. So
Yeah, yeah. It's such a beautiful way of putting it. And I know that editing can be quite an arduous process for some people. I've heard some real horror stories about, people locking themselves away in a room for months and months and months, almost
mm,
not seeing any daylight.
mm.
Is the editing side of it a process that you enjoy? I know that you just spoke about, the sculpting side of it there, which you obviously enjoy, but is editing as a whole something that you enjoy?
I love it. I love it. I think maybe I would love to work on someone else's. I've done short films and my partner's films that I've edited with her. But yeah, I think I love the process because for me, the only thing that's different in cinema to every other art form is the editing process because that's the only thing that differentiates from the other mediums, which is almost the purest form of cinema is the editing process. Um, no, I love it. I think it's obviously everything you do that's worth doing that's good is probably hard to do in some respect, but it probably never gets easier, but you also get better at it. But I love the process. I watch a lot of films that I then sit down and go, oh, how would I re-edited that to make it better? But
Yes.
it's never better. It's just a different person's version of that film. But I really love the editing process. But my goal would be to one day work with an editor or a co-editor that could elevate everything that I think is good, and then all of a sudden the film is doing its thing for you rather than you doing it to it.
Yes, yes. So now I'm curious to know. Actually, I didn't have this question here, but I'm curious to know when you're watching a film that you've made, what are you the most critical of? Your directing work, your writing work, producing, or editing while you're watching it, or is it a bit of everything?
It's hard to say because like probably a bit of everything, but like
Yeah.
I can get very nitpicky about certain things, like oh that eye line could have been a bit tighter, or you know. But to be honest, like I'm not a filmmaker that looks back at my old work and I like can't
Yeah.
look at it because it's terrible. Like I think the films you make are a time capsule of when you made it, and you're not going to rest on your laurels and be like, oh, this is the best thing I can ever do, because you can always get better, and even just through experience and time, you get better. But no, there's not one thing I look at it and say, oh, I could have done that better. But there's probably a million little decisions that go into all those decisions. And if I was to make it now, I might do them slightly differently. But it doesn't mean that the work before was bad.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. So you earned a Master of Film Studies from the University of Sydney in 2011, specialising in cinema and national identity. I was really curious to know a bit more about that because, in your opinion, does Australian cinema today still represent a national identity compared to its peak in the days of Ozploitation cinema and the films of the 90s and early 2000s?
It's so hard to say. I think, yeah, that degree I did was great. And I also did a bunch of other, courses within that. I did the Hollywood film with Bruce Isaac, who's an amazing, amazing teacher. I did a screenwriting class with Ian David, who's a great Australian TV writer. But yeah, like we're focusing more on European cinema in that national identity
Mm.
class. But I think when you're looking at Australian cinema, I guess it is. If you ask someone that isn't from here, there is a trope of Australian cinema that is quite recognizable. It's either with the outback or it's a suburban crime drama. But yeah, if you look at those 70s films up to the 90s, we had such a wide range of cinema just because of where the industry was at, and the desire for people to see more interesting work that could potentially take more risks. But I don't know. And today we do definitely have a national identity, and I think there's some great films, whether it be Sweet Country or The Stranger, or you're watching more crime stuff like off the back of massive success like Animal Kingdom. Um, I would like to see more romance in Australian cinema and more
Yes.
kind of romantic sincerity. I think we're very good at sometimes the darker aspects of human nature, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There's a lot of films out there, like Baby Teeth. Shannon Murphy's a good friend of mine. I went to AFTRS with her, and she made a great film in Baby Teeth that has that
Yeah.
emotional pull. So there's films out there, but when I made Talk to the People, I wanted to see Paris, Texas meets In the Mood for Love meets Vertigo, kind of in Australia, and because someone wants to make it and you have the ability to make it, I guess the national identity is going to be forever growing. So
Yes, that's right. That's right. Great answer there. Before we get into some of your own film work, I want to ask you about your work as an assistant director, which you've done throughout your career so far, including in between your own directing work. What have you taken away from those experiences as an assistant director when you're not actually in charge?
maybe it will change as I get further into my career, but I love just jumping back into the crew side of things. Like I started as a runner on reality TV, so like I never even knew that you could do jobs that cross the borders into narrative film in a similar sense. So I still do running jobs now just because if it's I need to pay the bills between developing something and I need to find the time to get into it. But I love meeting new people. I love being on the other side of it. But the great thing about the two jobs I think on set that are most creatively involved that aren't your own process, you can kind of easily get into in some sense, is probably the AD department and the script supervising continuity department. And I find that through my ADing, I do a lot of short films. I teach at AFTRS in that respect and other film courses. There's an excitement about helping. That's probably why I mentor people and also teach, is because I love facilitating creatively, but also logistically with someone else who's trying to fulfill their vision and their desire.
Mm.
And I feel like when as a filmmaker, selfishly, I can be on set where I'm not as emotionally invested, but I can see how someone else is doing something and I can help them facilitate that.
Mm.
But I also learn myself, like, oh, okay, that choice leads to this kind of outcome. That type of coverage leads to this kind of outcome. That kind of, choice here and there leads to this outcome. So you're forever learning because you're on a film set with people but that you're not at the helm. But it's exciting because you're not only facilitating someone else's dream, but you're, getting to be involved in almost every aspect of that production without having the emotional weight of it being your own project.
Mm. How difficult is it not to overstep the mark and to remember that you're assisting with someone else's work?
I think that's the skill, I think, and that's why all those great collaborators in those roles, especially the non necessarily the non, capital letter creative roles, like, but I think you just have to know what they want and know what, just listen to what the director and the team and the creative team want, and then you kind of just facilitate that. And if you can suggest things, but it's never your call. It's like you're always kind of suggesting and being open and facilitating that safe space, like you do with any kind of good collaboration. You all should be pointing in the same direction. If you're not all pointing in the same direction, then you're not necessarily in the right space to make the best work. But yeah, if you can just help someone get their dream, and it also facilitates your desire for that person, then that's the best collaboration to be in, even if you're not in a creative role.
Mm. And I guess opposite to that is how often are you relied upon for advice, considering your experience? And as a viewer watching your film, it feels like you've been making films for decades. That's the quality of your films. Are you relied upon for advice, considering your experience?
I love talking about film with anyone. If anyone, even anyone listening to this, like it could be a good or bad thing to say, but like, yeah, I love talking to anyone about film. So please reach out, because
Yeah.
I know how hard it is to start out. And I didn't come from my film background. I don't know anyone in the film industry when I was starting out. I didn't know anyone about anything. And just having someone to ask a simple question that can literally clarify like the hardest process in your mind that you just don't know about, that opens a door that then they can go to the next stage. That's so rewarding. So I love it. I mentor people. I talk to people about it. I teach. I like to think that I'm adept in the history of film, not only the practice of film. But I love it. I think that it's probably what teachers feel when they're working with students. If you see that little light bulb go off in their eyes, and then you know that they've stumbled upon something. I think the job of the director 95% of the time is to act like you don't have any ideas, and then you guide everyone else to find those ideas, and those ideas are then collectively yours as a team. But you always have an idea of what you want it to be and what you think it can be. But watching someone else kind of take in that moment of, oh, that's what it is, that's what it can be, that's how I do it. That's the most exciting thing, because I'm a filmmaker that wants to make movies, but I want the culture and the greater Australian culture of filmmaking to be as good as it can be. So why not
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
when you can?
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. Well done to you. As I said earlier, I've been a fan of your work for a while now, especially Lost Boy and Stranger, which I haven't been able to shake for all these years. Those two short films lead us into Two Ugly People, considering there seems to be a running theme across most of your work, and that is this narrative thread of the stranger or strangers.
Mm,
Michael's Tate seems to be a stranger in his own head in Lost Boy,
mm,
while Joel Jackson plays the lead character Stranger, with Stranger tattooed across his neck in the short film
mm.
Stranger, while Two Ugly People opens with the line, "To be a stranger, how rare is that?" For lack of better phrasing, what's your obsession here? What is it about this stranger narrative?
That's so funny. I've never actually even thought of that. I've always found some other lofty way to talk about my body of work. But when you're talking, it's the strangers, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like the mystery and the romanticism and the fact that someone can be anyone, and then you over time you learn who they are, and then that person becomes that person. Um, I think depending on what genre you're sitting in, if it's a romance, if it's a horror, if it's a crime, if it's a crime thriller, if it's psychological horror, whatever it is, I think just understanding the human mind and human nature has always been so interesting. And everyone that you ever meet starts off as a stranger, even if you've heard about them from another person. But I think, yeah, the idea of, if I was trying to be more introspective, everyone probably feels like a stranger to themselves. So an artist in my mind is someone that's trying to understand themselves in a form that's outside of their own body. Um, so if I was thinking about why strangers are constantly repetitive in my work, or I think it's just to try to understand myself in the different time that I'm making that piece of work, and then that's just how it's manifested. I don't think I've ever gone into it being like, this is how I'm going to do it this time because this is what I think it needs to be based on what I've done before. It's always just been a very honest reaction to how I'm feeling in that time. And I think maybe it's got to do with society or where I think I sit in culture, but wanting to understand myself better. And then if someone can watch that and not feel as much of a stranger to themselves after watching that, then that's something great.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what happened to me last night watching Two Ugly People. But yeah, so if you've never thought of this before, then how do you usually describe your work?
I think it's always about identity. It's about relationship identity. I think if you look at the process that I've made, the trajectory of my film through the characters and the stories, it started out with kind of like more of the solo individual character who had no connection to the real world, and then that is a statement on that individuality. And then as you moved from there to my other short films like Lost Boy and another film I made called Staring Contest, it's kind of more going into relationship drama and relationship territory and emotional romantic territory and who are you as a person, who are you within a relationship, and how do you exist in both spaces at once. um, but yeah, I don't know, I think it's probably something to do with that identity and something to do with trying to understand who you are in different places in your life. But I think, yeah, I'm kind of a romantic in that sense that I think everything I always talk about in my work always seems to be something emotionally related to love and romance and finding that love and romance and beauty in the everyday and the mundaneness, the beauty in the mundaneness, and where do you find meaning in perhaps places that you aren't able to understand, or some places that you are able to understand but don't want to accept.
I'm really looking forward to talking to you about this whole relationship thing. But I'm curious now, just listening to some of what you said there. How much of yourself do you inject into your work and into your films?
I think it's hard to say because I feel like my opinion of art is if you're going to get really deep into yourself, that's how I see art being. Like no matter
Mm,
how many facades you have up to protect, not protect, but to barriers you put yourself between you and the audience, it always has to come from that organic, emotionally driven, sincere place within you. Um, Not all art has to be that. There's definitely, different eras of art that didn't do that.
mm,
But for me, if I'm not exploring something that within myself, then the question mark, I need that strong question mark to be like, that will sustain me through the whole process of, because everything's so hard to do, especially in film. It takes so much time. And if I'm not asking a question that I really want an answer to, then I don't know how I would go sticking to it. But everything I've ever made, I think, speaks to me very directly, and I think I do have a voice within that. But then
mm.
I don't know what if someone who didn't know me at all, and maybe this will happen as my career moves forward, that I'll be talking to people who don't know me at all, and they'll be saying, "This is what I think your work is about," which means this is who I think you are.
Mm.
That's interesting and scary and exciting because I'll only learn something more about myself, which I can also learn more about everyone else. So
Mm.
I
Mm.
think my work is definitely autobiographical, but if that's where I start and then where it ends is different, then that's just where the process took me.
Yeah, what a wonderful way to describe it. That's so beautiful. And for our listeners for people who are listening to this and they want to go back and see some of Peter's earlier work, you can do so at his website as well. And that's where I was able to watch The Stranger again last night, which I absolutely love. And I recorded a podcast episode with Joel Jackson where he took a real deep dive into the making of that film from his perspective. So if anyone's out there interested in listening to that, I recommend checking it out. But I'm a serious sucker for two-hander relationship dramas. I don't know what it is about me. You know, I've been I've been married for nearly 20 years and in a relationship for 20 years with two kids, but for some reason I'm just swept away by relationship dramas and mostly two-handers. A few recent films similar to this one that come to my mind are David Wenham's Ellipsis,
Mm.
Robert Living's Two People, and Your Love Is Mine, and The Pretend One, which this film shares a producer with. Are you drawn to both relationship dramas and two-handers as a general film goer?
I think so. I think my favorite film, if I had to pick one, is probably The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson. And there's, even though it's not a male-female relationship, which most of my films seem to be about, there is that kind of romance between two people who are looking for something.
Mm.
And if I could ever be sitting in a room watching one scene be made, it would be that processing scene where Philip Seymour Hoffman is processing Joaquin Phoenix's character.
Yes.
So in my mind, I don't know, there's something about two people sitting in front of each other when there's such a landscape within that moment and within that connection that's what I seem to be drawn to unpack because, you can have as many people, as many things as you need in a film or a moment or a scene. But for some reason, I made a film called Staring Contest, which was the last short film I made before Totally People. And that was
Mm.
just, and I just wanted to shoot something. So I got two friends, to sit in my living room across from each other, and the film is just 10-minute two-hander, and we found a way to make it cinematically interesting and emotionally engaging. So there's something about two people looking at each other and being in some sort of history or some past or have some relationship that I want to unpack.
It was getting late last night while I was writing my questions, and I usually like to write my questions straight after I've seen the film. So it was getting quite late, and I saw that film on your website, and now I'm kicking myself that I didn't actually watch it.
Well, you can watch it now because it's a great film. I didn't make it as a film to be released, and I just did it as like an exercise of like Lost Boy and Stranger have a bunch of different locations, and it kind of
Mm.
cuts back and forth between different moments, and we're time jumping. And I just wanted to have two people sitting in front of each other for 10 minutes. Can you make a film that sustains that, or at least a scene? And it was an exercise in, it didn't cost me much money because it was in my living room with my friends. But
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of like if you took that and Stranger and a little bit of Lost Boy, it probably is the perfect ingredients to make something like Totally People.
I'm going to watch it as soon as we finish chatting here. And yeah, it's interesting that you just mentioned then about, being able to make this low budget film because I hope I'm not being too cheeky here, but is it easier as an independent filmmaker to make a two-hander as a first-time feature film, to ease that pressure on your budget?
Definitely, like 100%. Like
Mm.
we shot Totally People for $260,000, which
Yeah.
in film world is like that might go to one department in a normal film, and you get
Yes.
laughed at when you tell them you're doing a whole film for that much.
Mm.
Somehow, just through great choices and team and the people we had, it doesn't look like that. I think it looks like it cost many million dollars, but
Mm.
um, yeah, there's something about the entry point into film. Everyone, I have a lot of friends, and I also had a lot of kind of processes in my mind when I started out, like how am I going to make my first feature? And there's a great line by a great filmmaker says, you're waiting for the cavalry to come in and save you to help you make your first film, but you are the cavalry. Like you have to
Yes.
find a way to make it. And I was writing a bigger film, which I've got it's got 8 characters in it. It's over, one huge setting. It's a massive film. And then I was like, oh, that's not going to be my first film because I'm not going to be able to make this. I'm going to wait 10 years to try and get some funding for this and have nothing to show for it because I haven't made a film yet. So I wrote something that was contained and small, and yes, it does go to different locations, but it's all in the small town set in outback Australia, rural Australia, and it's very contained. Like it's two people. But then
Mm.
looking at it now, I'm speaking to even now to you about it. Like it probably isn't very different to the rest of my work, where it is two people sitting in a room and people
Mm.
existing in a space. Um, so it's probably the perfect film for me to make first because it's very contained, but it wouldn't be a film that I wouldn't have made at some point because even if I had all the money and budget in the world, I probably would still want to make this kind of movie. So I think it was just the perfect marrying of here's a film that we can make, and here's a film that I actually want to make as well.
Yeah, wonderful. And yeah, you just saying that about this small town. Another theme that I've noticed in your work is motels, RSL, small town bars, etc. Is there any reason behind that?
I think it's like those transient liminal spaces. Like they have such a wealth of character to them, but they
Yes.
are very transient spaces where people. If you said I want to make a film set in a hotel room, that could be about anything. It could
Mm.
be about a romance. It could be a murder. It could be, it could be the slowest kitchen sink drama. It could be the most intense, high octane kind of action film. Um, but there's something about those spaces that are very mundane and very, usual. Like people go to them all the time, and you pass through a motel and you never really think about it beyond it's a night stay. You go to a bar to have a drink, but anything can happen in a bar, anything can happen in a motel, anything can happen in an RSL. So there's something about those transient spaces that have that ability to be anything, and that's what makes it exciting to set some sort of stories in there.
You're listening to the Cinema Australia podcast on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or at cinemaaustralia.com.au.
So where did the idea for Two Ugly People come from? It's such a beautiful narrative that it's a captivating one. It keeps you gripped from start to finish because you want to know where this relationship is leading to. Where did the idea for this one come from?
It's hard to say because I actually kind of was talking to my fiance about this, and I was like, I know this question is going to get asked during not only this interview but probably the whole process of making this film, and I kind of don't know releasing this film, but I actually don't know a clear answer. Like I feel like it started somewhere in this idea of wanting to live within a fantasy and what that means in reality, and who in everyone in their lives has two different lives. You have the person you are inside your own head and your dreams and your subconscious, then you have the one that you present every day to normal people. This is a film that is trying to explore that idea of who we are and what does it mean to be a stranger, and what does it mean to have a past, and what does it mean to have fantasies and dreams and desires. So I think this film just came from the exploration of what does it mean to want to live in a fantasy, and what does it mean to come from somewhere, be somewhere in the moment, and not necessarily knowing where that's going to go.
Yeah. And not everything about this relationship is as it seems, and things are revealed about the relationship as the film goes on, and quite an incredible kind of twist towards the end of the film. Did you have all of this narrative planned out from the beginning before you started writing, or were some of these ideas things that came to you as you were writing the script?
I think it's kind of like it's an exploration through an idea, and I think anyone can be a writer if they have a process to allow their best work to get out. And I think with me, I don't really touch the actual script writing until the very end of the process, and everything else is kind of thinking and dreaming and writing down one-page outlines and character breakdowns and ideas and beat sheets and structures. And when I teach screenwriting, it's always about, what's your log line? Where do you start? What's the simplest version of this film? All right, now let's extrapolate that out into a beat sheet. And then once you have your beat sheet, you have your core, like kind of midpoint, you have your first act turning point, you have your climax, all these things. And I think through having a structure, because if I'm going back to when I left art school and went into film school, like I didn't have that ability to know the process I needed to get my ideas out. I just knew that I had ideas. It's definitely a journey you go on that you then, you find it as you go. And that's probably why I also enjoy the editing process so much as an editor who also is the writer director, is because I'm finding it as I go. Is my scripts different to the final film? Probably in a couple of scenes might be switched around, and some of the scenes that were there in the script aren't there anymore, but it is the same film. It has the same soul. It has the same idea. So I guess it is something that as I'm doing it, I'm working it out, but then it always kind of ends up being what it should have been by the end. And there's kind of a great quote by Francis Ford Coppola, which is like, the film will tell you what it needs to be. Yeah. You wrestle with it, but it will tell you what it needs to be. And then to double up on my quotes, there's another quote by Paul Thomas Anderson, who says that eventually you hope that your characters start talking back to you. And if they're telling you that I don't want to do that, I'm going to go down this path. And then you either say, you can go down that path if you want, but it's going to cause this kind of pain, and they're going to have to deal with that. Or they'll tell you, I wouldn't even do that. Like, Daniel Plainview wouldn't do this certain thing in There Will Be Blood, because this is who he is. So eventually the film tells you where it wants to go, and the characters will tell you what they will and won't do, and then you have to find the best way to make it dramatic.
Yes, you certainly reached that level here. This is a bit of a personal question for me, which people probably won't understand until they see the film. So hopefully most people are listening to this once they've seen it. But that opening sequence of Two Ugly People is one that's now burned into my mind's eye, such as its sheer beauty, and also because we rarely see rain used for dramatic effect in Australian films. Can you talk us through that opening sequence? Was it planned like that, or again, is it something that came during the editing stages of the film?
No, that was all planned. Like, and luckily, I just had an amazing DOP and a team and locations, and we kind of explored different ways of shooting things. And we had a lot of. That's why I think, once again, being the editor myself, not saying that another editor that I would work with wouldn't find it, but
Mm.
I kind of like this idea that I have this raw material that I was like, hey, how do you start a film? And I think not judging these other films at all because every film has its purpose and why its choices are made. But I've seen so many films where you just kind of, here's a shot of the streets, here's a low kind of like ambient soundtrack, and then you kind of move slowly from where you start to where the film is going to take place. And it's kind of like that's how you set up a story. But it's always very like easing, like you're very like kind of eased into the story.
Yes.
Where this I was like, how do we start with a crescendo? How
Mm.
do we start with like I want someone to sit in the cinema and they're like, the hair to blow back because you're like, whoa, what's this film? Um, because the film is a slow burn and has like a slow kind of pace to the revealing of information, but I hope it doesn't feel slow. But
Mm.
you the emotion is big and the revelation is going to be big. So therefore, I wanted to start you in the mindset of, oh, there's something big under the surface here. So
Mm.
what is the most grand and operatic and beautifully kind of, sensual that we can start someone watching this film? And it could have very easily been a credit sequence, but then we
Yes.
decided to be bold and just make it more of an epilogue. Epilogue at the start? No, it's you kind of
Prologue.
have prologue where you have
Mm.
this like kind of it's like you're going into a 1930s 40s film in the cinema and they got the music playing and it's meant to ease you into the narrative, like Lawrence of Arabia or 2001: A Space Odyssey. But how do you do that in a Hitchcockian romantic sense? So
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of a lot, but it's very beautiful and calming, and it throws you into a narrative that you wonder where that's going to go.
It really is. And after I finished watching the film, I actually replayed it again instantly just to watch that opening shot again. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, it's impossible to talk about this film without talking about the two leads, Michael and Cato.
Michael, I've worked on like four films together now. One of them we was like so early on that we didn't release. There's actually another film I made with Joel Jackson, who's another great actor in Strangers. I love that film when I made that
Mhm.
film. But Joel was like, "Oh, there's a guy we can get to play his brother. That his name's Michael Sheasby, and we got him for like a couple of days to shoot this other little short film we made before Stranger." And Mike sent us a tape that was just him literally looking in a mirror and then he slaps himself in the face a few times. Then he just kind of sits down and looks at himself. And I was like, that's my guy. That guy is like, there's something in him that there's a great quote by PTA, and maybe I'm a huge PTA fanboy, but he says that when he saw Philip Seymour Hoffman, he was like, that's him. That's my love.
Mm.
That's the guy I want to be with, kind of thing.
Yes.
Um, which is true. Like when I met him, I was like, okay, everything that I see in me, I see in you, and we have a shared goal of getting that out onto the screen. Um, but yeah, I think with actors maybe it's like an Ilya Kazan approach where it's like I just love knowing the actors and being around them and being friends with them, and then I write stuff for them because I know them so intuitively. But then I've also worked with great actors that I haven't known, and I didn't write it for them, but they were
Mm.
perfect for that role. But when it came to Mike and Kat, we I've known them both for forever. Like we I wrote it for them, and I knew that they would be perfect for it, and as a first time filmmaker, you wish that they were the biggest actors in the world because it makes everything so much easier. But it was also a conscious choice to say, okay, let's go with the people who are right rather than the people that we might be able to get that might not be as right. Um, but yeah, like I think just knowing them and most of the time, to be honest, all the work got done in prep when we're talking about rehearsals, and I love rehearsals and experiential rehearsals and people just kind of being in places together and talking about stuff. Once I got to the filming process on set, it was kind of just like I know that that character is in Mike somewhere, and I know that that character is in Cat somewhere. So most of my
Mm.
direction is just allow it to be what it needs to be within yourself. If this scene is between two characters, but this scene can also be between Mike and Cat, and that would
Mm.
still play as it needs to be. So I was very lucky because I think they're amazing performances, and they're people that I really want to do well because they're my friends, but also
Mm.
they were perfect for that film.
Yeah, just incredible performances. So beautiful to watch together. And also complementing this film's captivating narrative is Watson's hypnotic cinematography. Had you known or worked with Adric previously, or was this an entirely new experience for you?
Adric is the rarest of the rarest when it comes to cinematographers. This sounds lame that everyone always says about people, but like, he's actually like a true artist when it comes to that work. And
Yeah.
I met Adric when I did my grad dip in directing at AFTRS in 2013 or whenever it was, and he was a cinematographer that everyone instantly knew he was going to be great. And he, like me, he actually had a background in painting. He came from the art background as well. So we kind of always kept in touch and wanted to work together. And then he came, he's in London right now, but he came out to
Yeah.
town to come see his family. And we had a coffee and he's like, we should work on something together. And then I was like, well, I've actually written a film that might work out. Um, but yeah, also having someone that has that ability and that scope, and he's an amazing lighting DOP. Like he worked with a great lighting team on this, which was a new company that these young guys are starting out, but they've done a lot of work now. But he and them together, like it's just unbelievable. He
Yeah.
makes anything look amazing that you thought couldn't possibly be that amazing, and but it's so rooted in narrative that you can't imagine it being anything else.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And speaking of paintings and photography, there, who captured the B-roll for this film? Because that's just as stunning. Was that Adric as well?
That was Adric, and I think even Matthew Bedford, who was one of our ACs, he rolled on a few things when we were kind of out on locations and stuff. But all of it was planned within the shooting process, and
Mm.
all the kind of location shots you see that we use throughout the film at the end of the film, that was all taken as a choice because that's what was scripted.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like when you're walking around with Adric, it's you're walking around town, you have a camera in your hand, like he's gonna find a frame that you're like, oh wow, that's it. But we're all in the right place at the right time with the right team in the right location. Like he can point a camera and it will look amazing. But yeah, he's so narratively driven that it was always going to work within the film.
Yes, yeah, and it really does. I want to talk to you about the choice of music used throughout Two Ugly People as well as the original score. But let's start with this music first. Were there any particular reasons behind your choice of karaoke songs used throughout the film, and in particular, Tenterfield Saddler by Peter Allen and Crocodile Shoes by Jimmy Nail?
They're just songs that always stuck with me. Like Crocodile Shoes is like one of my dad's favorite songs that we used to play in the car on a cassette when we were driving around in Australia on road trips. And Tenterfield Saddle, we actually didn't plan to use that for song at all. And we were driving around on location. We were like, oh, we need a song that my sister actually is going to sing in the film as the karaoke singer. And we're like, I just thought, what about Tenterfield Saddle? It's such an Australian, beautiful song. And I actually didn't know of it that well until I think, yeah, Joel played Peter Allen in a TV show, Joel
Yes,
Jackson, and I was like,
yes,
oh, Tentacle Saddle, that's a great song.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, there's something about it. Like it's like I always find my music first. I think it's like a Tarantino thing. It's like he goes into his music room and finds his music for the film, and then all of a sudden the film comes alive in his head. But the first song I had, which is the song in the film, which is Stranger in the Night, that was the first song, and then it just became a process of okay, what do we build around that? A lot of that music that is actually quite amazing and old and from a different era is all just production library music that we scrolled through it endlessly. Our team and one of my producers, we just endlessly went through hours and hours of music. And these are songs that you can get for like, $300 and you
yeah,
own them for life because they're just out of copyright or they're owned by production libraries. And
yeah.
some of it's amazing. But then, yeah, those karaoke songs, they kind of came organically, but at the same time, they probably were never going to be anything different than what they were because they are so right to the character. Like Crocodile Shoes is that character. Like the character of
Yes.
Jimmy Nail, like his character as the performer and a singer, like it is the character we're portraying in the film. Like he is that kind of stranger, roll into
Yeah.
town cowboy-esque kind of
Yeah.
guy.
Yes. And you said that was your sister who was singing the karaoke?
Yeah, she's gonna hate me because I said I need in the script it says bourbon and coke mum going for it on the microphone. And she's actually a good singer. Like that's the thing. Like she'd always been a good singer, and I was like, well, this is gonna be good because she's a good singer, but she doesn't know the song very well. So she like I told her a couple of days before this is what song it's going to be.
Mm.
Actually, before that, when I told her I wanted her to be in the film, I told her it was All by Myself by Celine Dion,
Mm.
just to get her working on something. And then a couple of days before, we're like, no, it's actually this song. I don't want you really to know it. And then we had this on this TV. We had the words like a proper karaoke machine, and she kind of just went for it. And even in posts, Joe Mount, my sound designer, was like, do you want us to clean it up and make it sound a bit better? And I was like, no, let's leave it as it is, but it's perfect. And she's going to hate
Yes.
me, but at the same time, it's exactly what it needs for the film.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's such a unique interpretation of the film. It's not very clear what the song is at the beginning of her singing until you actually hear the lyrics.
Exactly, and it's such an iconic Australian song that like it's once again, there's lines in that song about kangaroos and stuff. Like we wanted
Yeah,
to ground it
yeah,
in Australia and that culture, but
yes.
obviously the place it is, it's such a nowhere place where it could be anywhere, but it definitely feels like Australia in some way.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, it got me thinking as well. Was this an actual restaurant set up with this karaoke stage, or was that a dress set? Because I noticed all of the chairs and tables kind of pushed over to the corner.
Yeah, you're literally never believe like literally when you're writing a film, you imagine what the like I wrote it's a Chinese restaurant in rural Australia because every small town has a Chinese restaurant
Yes,
that is
multiple.
so opulent and huge that you can't believe that they ever existed. And I wrote that it had a karaoke bar, it was a bar and a restaurant, and it had this wild in the mood for love-esque kind of design. Um, and we just went looking, like me and my team and my producers, we just went looking and we did all the location scouting ourselves and we came across this place in Kashula called Chan's Village Cantonese restaurant, and that's it. That's the like our designer did a once over and moved everything and put everything together and added stuff in and took stuff away. But it was such a process of like we found something so perfect, like most of the locations. But Lorana Lucas is a great designer, and she kind of saw what we were going for and then just molded it what we could find. But she built that whole everything is the real location. I love shooting on location, but she
Yeah.
redesigned the whole motel room and reordered everything in all those different locations, and it ends up being somewhere that looks so lived in and real. But yeah, they are real places, but they're very considered how they were set up.
Wow, wow, very interesting. So, how close were all of these locations to each other?
So all the motel and all that kind of surrounding area was in a place called Coonabarabran, which is like 6 hours out of Sydney, kind of near Dubbo.
Mm.
And then went to Gilgandra, which is another small town. We did all the night exterior stuff there, all the walking around in the streets and stuff. And then yeah, the Fruit World place was just near just out west, and then yeah, the Kashula restaurant was yeah like a kind of well like an hour 45 minutes from Sydney.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like everything felt like it was in one small town because Australian small towns are kind of like that. Like you have the motels, and
Mhm.
you've got the restaurant, and you've got the petrol stations, and you've got the small supermarket grocery. But the film is about living in a fantasy and the idea of the characters doing that. So these every place does feel quite fantastical and strange, but it also fits in that mundaneness of a Jim Jarmusch kind of world or a mystery train kind of place. So
Mhm. How did you find Taijan Lu? Hopefully that's how I pronounce it. Who plays the manager Terry? That that voice is incredible.
he is phenomenal. Tasia. We had great casting director Danny Long and Ryan Madden was doing our casting, and they I'm such a film buff, and I just love it. But there's a scene when David Lynch actually had his eyes shut on set, and he's like, "Oh, I need a giant. I need this person. I need a man with one arm," and then the team just has to go off and find them. It's kind of like that with Danny. Like I was like, "Oh, I want a Chinese Australian opera singer who can also play a bartender, but I don't want them necessarily to have any real like to find an actor who can do that with that
Yeah.
level of voice is almost impossible.
Mhm.
The woman in the supermarket, she's actually she has a lot of commercials, but um, she's a piano player and she has played for him as a singer.
Wow.
And yeah, Danny just kind of came back and said, "Here's a list of people that you would never expect to ever find." And there was a great agent who works in Sydney who kind of represented them, and he was like, "Yeah, these are the people I think will be good for this." And they're like that, yeah, that character, that Terry character, is probably one of my favorite characters, and it's completely him. Like he's not an actor, he's a singer, but he's not necessarily a professional singer. But he lived in China and then came out to Australia, and now he works, in business, and that is the character. Like it's the person that came to rural Australia and decided to start a bar, and now he has his dream of once upon a time being an opera singer, but now he works as a bartender.
Wow, amazing. I also mentioned this film's original score, which is, oh God, I just can't articulate how I feel about this score, but it did something to to my soul that just shattered me. It is so unbelievably beautiful, and it's by all Orla Doyle and Tony Buchan.
Buchan, yeah, Buchan.
Buchan, yeah, it gave me goosebumps during the entire thing. What references did you give these to work with, or is this all them?
So it's kind of a funny story because Orla Doyle, Orla is my fiance, and she's also part of our company that we started to make films. And she's an amazing musician in her own right. She sings jazz and can play piano. Um, but we were searching for a composer for a while because we had this temp music that we used, and it's the risk of using temp music when you're a filmmaker, especially an editor, is that you fall in love with it. And
Yeah.
we had music from, In the Mood for Love and Vertigo and all these kind of Bernard Herrmann scores and Ennio Morricone music. We had all these kind of like, the world's best three composers ever. Um, so then the task of, all right, we've got no money, we can't get an orchestra. We want to have this big, huge, full feeling of music, but then also find someone that can possibly write that, not only record it, but write it.
Mm.
We kind of went a long way trying to find everyone and find other music and library music and got to a point where all maybe just purely just being fed up with me constantly being like, we need to find someone to do this. She just sat down one day and her and I just spoke about our references, and she obviously knows the film so much because she's the producer.
Yeah.
Um, and my partner and also a filmmaker, she was like, let's just sit down. We got a keyboard that was given to me by my uncle who was living in my house at the time that we moved out because we needed to save money. And he's like, oh, can you store this in the garage? And we're like, can we borrow it to actually try and write some music? And we went away over the Christmas holidays and just sat in a room for a couple of hours, and she just stringed together these most amazing melodies. And then we took it to Tony Beacon's like a really renowned kind of Australian producer. He's worked internationally, worked in all over the place. He does amazing music, and he's done a couple of films before, but he's a producer, but also can play every single instrument. And together, I just sat there in the room with them, and they're both singing on it. They're both playing everything. Like Tony's playing all the instruments. He's playing instruments I've never even heard of, like the theremin I've never even heard of before. Um, and that score came out, and we did that whole score, recorded that whole score in a week. Um,
In a week.
yeah, all I wrote it over a couple of weeks, but then we just recorded it in a week. And I was sitting there being like, "Shit, we're going to run out of money. I don't know how we're going to afford to finish this in a week." And then got to the end of the Friday, and Tony's like, "Yep, there it is." And we haven't touched it since we did those days.
Unbelievable. Are you planning to release it on its own?
Yeah, we'd love to. I'm
Mm.
the fan and nerd in me wants to eventually release it in some sort of vinyl, but like
Oh, yes.
it's just beautiful. Like it's
Yeah.
music that is like if I heard that I'd be like, wow, what is that? And it
Yeah.
actually not to throw shade to, Bernard Herrmann or Ennio Morricone or any of those, but like it's up there. Like we were like, oh, I don't even remember what the music used to be. Like this is the music, and it's perfect for the film, but it's also elevated it in a way that the music before the temp music couldn't,
Yes.
which is the
Yes.
beauty of original score.
Yeah, I've just listening to you talk about it, and now I'm remembering the score. I've got like a small tear building up in the corner of my eye. I just think it is
It's
so
so
beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah, and I can't wait to watch the film again, but I
Mm.
also can't wait to watch the film again just to hear that score.
But when you hear it in the cinema, like I've only ever watched it for the tech check and stuff with that music in the
Yes.
cinema in a proper mixing theater. It's
Mm,
it's like it's crazy. Like the opening, all of it is amazing, but like you
mm,
just get wow, like how do they do that? And it
yes.
it was it didn't cost us 190 grand to get an orchestra.
Yes. I've just got a few more questions here before we wrap up. But
Mm,
you've spoken about Orla, and you obviously have this big team behind you, and
mm,
your production company, Seymour Pictures.
mm.
You seem to be kicking goals left, right, and center at the moment with another new feature film recently announced, directed by Orla. What are your goals with Seymour Pictures? What's the future hope here?
Yeah, we started a company because we were filmmakers who wanted to make stuff. And I guess the hardest thing is, as a filmmaker, is trying to find those producers who want to
Mm,
throw in and go, hey, we'll help you. But me and Orla Doyle and Julia Gardell, who's an amazing actor, and she acted in a web series that Orla made called Sirens, which is
mm,
amazing. Um, we decided to make a company together and like, hey, let's go, let's not wait, let's go make films. And it's not like we're rushing into it, not knowing what we're doing, because I've been, in the creative industry and film industry for like 17 years now. Um, but we got together and we're like, okay, how do we get what we need to make a film? And luckily, through especially my time working in the film industry, I've got a lot of collaborators who want to support me, and in return, we're supporting them to make their first features. And yeah, we kind of went out to private investors and different people and family and crowdfunding, and like we want to make a film. But we're not just pitching a film. We want to pitch a company that has a scope of a trajectory they want to go on, which is, making great independent Australian cinema. And maybe Totally People sits more in the art house world, but we're leaning to the next film especially, and beyond that, far more commercial, but having that unique Australian but unique personal kind of storytelling. We want to make films. We want to make films that we want to see, and we want to see in cinemas, and we want to support the filmmakers around us who want to help us do that. We kind of have this like collective of people that now, from making the first film, we're on to our second film now called Hold Still, which Julie is the lead actor in, and All is the writer director, and I'm the producer on. We kind of just shift hats every now and then to get the next film made, because our goal is to make films. Our goal isn't just to make one film and then see what happens. Like we want to be making films, and I have a slate of films that I'm working on right now and trying to get my next film up. So it's all about just producing work, not just doing everything you can to make one film and then hope that's good enough.
Well, I honestly and truly wish you all the best. And if I was a millionaire, I'd be throwing a whole ton of money at you to get these films made.
Thank you.
I just want to wrap up here by asking you a question that I ask all my podcast guests, and that's if you've seen any Australian films lately that have really stood out for you.
What have I seen that I really liked? I really liked I went and saw One Up the Hill by Sam Van Grinsman. I thought that was a beautiful film.
Good. So
good. I love that he went for something. It wasn't like you were just sticking to a genre or sticking to. And I think Totally People is similar. Like there's filmmakers that are trying something and that have a unique voice. What have I seen recently?
Talk about a two-hander relationship drama.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen a two-hander relationship drama with three characters in it, played by two people?
No, I haven't. It's quite beautiful. It's a unique ghost story, and goes through a big thing in Totally People as well, with the multiple characters and stuff. So. Yeah, I think there is a lot of interesting filmmakers out there that are making stuff, and if you go to that higher level of The Strangers and stuff like that, there are some amazing filmmakers out there. But I really enjoyed that film, and I think I just want to see more people make more interesting films that are supported by companies and budgets that allow it to be what it needs to be.
And When Up the Hill is also screening at Cinefest Oz as well. So if you're heading down there, you can catch two of these great films. But Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to join the Cinema Australia podcast. I can't praise this film enough, and I really appreciate you sharing your stories with us.
Oh, thank you so much. I actually remember listening to the interview you did with Joel ages ago, and I was this is great. I can't wait to one day have a film that I can talk about, and I'm glad that this is the film, because I want people to see it, and I'm so glad that you loved it so much. So thank you.
That's wonderful to hear. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Find all the latest Australian film news at cinemaaustralia.com.au. You can follow Cinema Australia on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and TikTok.